If the sun suddenly went out, and already your imaginations have made that happen, hasn't it? If the sun suddenly went out, very obviously life on earth would be impossible, because the sun supplies warmth. It enables us to see, to make a connection between our physical eyes and something to see. That much is obvious. Now switch it internally. An unhappy and a nervous person is unhappy and nervous because of the absence of something that is essential to happiness and self-command, which is the spiritual sun. Most people will never know it because they are quite satisfied, and think how horrible this is, because they're satisfied with living a cold life, not only cold, but a sightless life where they can't see. They're groping in the dark. They say that these little creatures that live in caves all their life, obviously, that's the only life they know, living underground down there. The idea of something outside of the mouth of the cave they live in, the idea of something different from the dark world down there, the idea can't occur to them that there's sunlight outside. The very same thing with your friends and your neighbors. This is important to get, as simple as the thought is, because part of the problem is still in you. Just now, the spiritual sun does not exist to you in its fullness. You are in a position where you used to be way down deep in the cave, and through the mercy of heaven, you began to feel an urge to walk higher in the darkness toward the sunlight outside. And so all of you listening to this talk are somewhere in the cave of darkness approaching the sunlight. How are you going to increase your speed in getting out to where you have the full warmth and the full ability to see? One way. Now you take this one way for the rest of the day. The one way is to feel your coldness. To do that requires some energetic effort on your part. And we can start by defining a cold life, a cold spirit. You know very well what it is, because it is nervousness. Coldness is nervousness. It's having to change your mind dozens of times over the simplest of choices to make. To be cold means, and here I can simplify it for you, to be cold and chilly and always want a heavy coat to get warm, means to be an unhappy man or woman. Now see, you can't escape that. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you can answer it in the privacy of your own mind. I'm going to ask you, yes or no, which side are you on? Are you a happy person, or are you an unhappy person? Your actual state of nervousness of groping, of hoping that you might make the right decision. That is the coldness, that is the unhappiness, that is what you're very well acquainted with in your emotions and in parts of your mind, but you have not brought up to awareness the horrifying fact that you are dominated by an unhappy, pressurized state of being. You are dominated by that. To make it worse, thousands of forces exist in this wicked world that don't want you ever to get to the point where you know that you're cold. And one of the chief forces, which has many variations to it, that wants to keep you asleep in the cave is called quick thrills. The quick thrill of talking back angrily to someone who offended you. The quick thrill of believing that tomorrow will be better. The quick thrill of saying to yourself the phony philosophy of, this too will pass. That's a phony philosophy. This too will pass. You have been saying that inside the darkness of the cave for all the years that represent your total life on earth so far. You've been saying that as a means of comforting yourself, of giving yourself a little strength to go on and get through. You said, this too will pass. Well, of course, the argument with the boyfriend passed, to be replaced by the next argument with the next boyfriend. Of course, the sharp disappointment over the failure of your new plan passed. It went away after a few days of being shocked by the final result, only to be replaced by the next pain. And now you have to call on what doesn't work again in an effort to see that, hope that it might finally work. This too will pass. I'll give you a better spiritual statement. This too can be understood out of existence. What's your problem? What was the dominating pressure, nervousness, hurt that dominated you from the time you got up till 9:05 on this Sunday morning? I want you to use memory properly to recall some of the things that felt bad. Now, you can't get any simpler than that. What made you feel bad this morning? The reason you had it this morning is because you had it yesterday morning. The reason you had it yesterday morning is because you had it the morning before that. And the reason you had it in all those previous mornings is because you never learned to do the right thing with your hurts. You never stopped right in the middle of the distracting quarrel with your spouse or fellow worker at the factory, or the civil war inside your own mind. You did not do something intelligent. You failed to do something intelligent. You continued to grope around in your sunless inner world, which is cold, which is dark, and which you can't see and understand yourself or anyone else. You did not do something different. You did not do something new. And if you don't do something new and different, tomorrow morning, from the time you get up until after 9 in the morning, you're going to suffer again. You're going to feel bad. I have to ask you a question. Please. What on earth is wrong with you? What is, I'm very serious. What's wrong with you that you would continue to allow yourself to be whipped, to be wounded, that you would allow yourself to cry and scream out in fear, in pain? What's wrong with you that you allow that to continue when you don't have to? Now, I'm telling you that. You don't know that. If you knew that it could be stopped, you would have allowed it to stop. But you don't know that. You've lived so long in your cold and spiritually sunless interior that you have never challenged the condition. You have never pulled yourself up sharp and said, wow, it's an awful life. Now that part's true. Of course it is. Dreadful, tragic life. That part is true. And then you made the mistake. Instead of intelligently questioning the grip that pain has on you and loneliness has, instead of questioning it, you found false, self-destructive pleasure in complaining about it. And you complain about it because that's the same thing as raising the white flag of surrender to hurt feelings and terror and worry about what's around the next corner called tomorrow. You surrendered. This morning, I want you to picture it in your mind. This is a proper use of imagination. I want you to picture going out that flagpole in your front yard representing your whole life. And I want you to see that white flag of surrender that you've had up there all the time. And I want you to unhook the bottom of the rope and get it free. And I want you to pull on the one line that pulls down that white flag. And you take it and you throw it in the trash box. And you put up the flag of truth in its place. And you picture yourself doing that up to the top of the flagpole where the winds can catch it and you can look at it all the time. See, you didn't know. Now you know that you can do internally and visibly what I just illustrated to you with the physical flagpole and the flag and you being involved in it. Now you know not only what can be done, but you also know absolutely what you must do if you are ever going to save your soul. Now I've got to tell you something else. And you pay heed to this. After this talk of 12 or 15 minutes so far, there is a certain part of you that will never be the same. That part is you now, right now, because of what you've heard so far in this talk, you have a personal responsibility. You have an individual duty to accept what the Son of Truth has offered to you. A gift of everlasting life, which you don't understand yet, so just take it as best you can understand it. This morning, you have been given the method for attaining everlasting life. Your heart understands that. Your head doesn't. One day your heart will understand it, and then you will have it. But for now, all of you hearing this talk have a responsibility for understanding what has been offered to you in this talk. Now, what does that mean? I have a responsibility. The brightness and the warmth and the ability to perceive and understand the spiritual world has been presented to you. There's no way you will ever forget what you've heard this morning. It will stay with you always. It will be down inside you, maybe covered up with the blankets of your own heavy mind, but it will always be down there. And here is where your sensing and acting of responsibility comes in. You can remove the blankets so that what you've heard this morning will lead you out of the cave into where the sunlight is bright and cheery and happy. But you have to take the responsibility for making the right decision as to what you're going to do with what you've heard here this morning. And I'm going to tell you the right thing to do. And listen, now you listen. There is only one truth. There is only one right kind of action. And I emphasize that to knock out all those hidden pretenses that you have in which you say, I know what is best for me. A miserable, sick, crying, hostile man says, I know what is best for me. He knows what is best for the kingdom of hell. Wouldn't you agree that hostility and hatred are a part of hell? Where do you live most of the time? You don't know. Because you haven't even arrived at the point of your inner spiritual development that you can watch yourself in action every second, and you should be doing it right now. All right. The message of inner deliverance, of inner warmth and inner perception has been presented to you in very simple language. Now And I'm talking to each one of you here in this room and hearing the talk on tape somewhere else. Now, it is entirely up to you. It is entirely up to you as to what happens to you from the moment you walk out of this hall and go out into the world of business, of family life, of a little fun at the ball game. Whatever happens to you, personally, you, sir, you, miss, you, and only you are responsible for what happens. If you go out of here and refuse the lessons you've heard this morning, if you love the darkness of your own self-deception and own self-pain, if you love that, don't you come crying to me when the world blasts you and wounds you and robs you and tosses you out into the junk pile. Don't you come complaining to anyone else because you've had a chance this morning. Your heart and your spirit should feel a certain quivering of rightness, of pleasure over these points which are telling you that if you take self-responsibility for understanding that you're in nothing but darkness, you can shatter the darkness, and in no other way. It's up to you. Most people are hardened. The vast majority of human beings have lived and will continue to live in the hideous pleasure of staying inside the cave, not making an effort to get out, because the sun, spiritual sun, is certainly out there. But most people have chosen to stay inside the cave and live a life of horrible, self-destructive lies and sarcasms and sneerings and hatreds. They will depart this life never knowing what they could have had. Right now, at this very moment, now is the time for you, all of you, to allow that different feeling that you've heard and felt in this talk so far, to allow that different feeling to have your honest attention. I'm telling you to direct your attention and loving interest on those. Wow, I didn't expect to hear anything like that when I came to the talk at New Life Foundation. It's utterly different from anything I've ever heard before. That is what I want you to know. And I want you to put your full attention to it, because that is the very beginning of you wanting to get out of your dark house and go outside and pull down the white flag of surrender and put up the flag of personal spiritual liberty. That's the start. Now listen, you have to make a turnaround in the direction. And this morning, I'm giving you the opportunity to do that, because you're going in the wrong direction. Sir, miss, I know you don't realize it, you don't understand it. But instead of going upward in the mouth of the cave to where you could break out, you're going down deeper into the cave and you don't know it. Listen to me. By coming to these classes over and over, you'll first of all be appalled at what you've done and what you've allowed to be done against yourself. Is there anyone in this room, we'll take a little spiritual poll. Is there anyone in this room who has arrived at the inner spiritual state where you were inside the cave living only from what you wanted to get, what you wanted to do? That was your whole life. Remember? All you want to do was get things. Is there anyone in this room, you can even raise your hand if you like, we're right in the middle of grabbing and scowling and ridiculous sarcasms, right in the middle of hurting other people? Oh, I better emphasize that a little bit. Oh, I have to do that in the question, then I'll come back to the original one. I have to ask you something very solemnly. Please, when are you going to give up hurting other people? When are you going to stop it? You can't be spiritual if you still like to hurt other people and if you still do it. And if you're in the cave of coldness and darkness, that's what you give to everyone. The way you talk. You give to other people. Look, come on. You give to other people what you really are, not what you say you are, not what you lie about and say you're loving and kindly. You give to other people your precise nature, what it really is. And that's what you give to everyone you meet. Sir, how can you continue to go one more day treating that woman in your life the way you now treat her? How can you do it? The answer to that is you're not even conscious that you're doing it. And you're not conscious that you're doing it because your feeling of being powerful, of dominating that woman, that is what you value. You value, in other words, you value hurting the wife or child or whoever. You value hurting them by bully, so on. You value that because it seems to give you an identity. I know who I am. I'm stronger than she is. I must be someone. She's weak. I can make her cry. I can make her bawl anytime I want. Therefore, I must be strong. Commercial business madness, aggression, stealing. Now, I know you have to make a living. Everybody has to earn money. We're not talking about earning an honest living. Have any of you ever been in a condition where your whole spiritual and employment life was dominated about putting something over on someone else to get their money and let it so it becomes your money? And that's what dominated your whole thinking. At night you added up the books and got real excited that you get a special big sale today. I'm trying to give you examples of the sick, neurotic, non-life that goes on in the cave, in the darkness and the frigidity of it. Back to the original question. Is there one or more students or attendees in this room who was satisfied with the cave darkness existence, and then one day or one series of days or weeks or months or years, the roof collapsed? Just that one more brick of outrageous fortune was added to the roof, and the roof collapsed on you. That is,
since all you can get inside the cave life is sorrow and loneliness and sickness and worry, all these piled up inside you, and then there came the climactic crash over your head, and it caused a shocking displacement within. You found out in the cave, sitting amidst the ruins of your own life, you found out, you've never been more surprised in your life. What bad thing is happening to me? I don't want to think about money. For the last week, I haven't one thought about money. What's going wrong with me? I must be getting sick. You understand that, of course you do. What's happening inside me? I used to have nothing but a competitive spirit, one of rivalry toward everyone, anything, toward the other man for the pretty girl at the party, sense of rivalry. I wanted to beat him out and pick up the pretty girl. Rivalry in business. Always needing to be the right one. And how strange. Now this is after the roof fell in. How strange that I don't think about those things. They're beginning to fade out of my attention and interest. I'm not interested in it. I have to earn a living. I have to get money to buy food at the grocery shop. But it's not pressing in on me. It wasn't my whole life like it used to be. What's happening to me? Those of you who have gone through this experience, you know that, of course, it was a preliminary, blessed, and healthy state. All right. I'll get to the question in a minute. And I think this is the minute. Who among you have been sitting among the ruins of your unlife? You didn't have a life, you had an unlife that you called life. And went through this experience I just explained a little bit. Your values are changing. You don't know how, what, why, and you're even worried over it. You're worried because your former false values gave you a sense of excitement, of purpose. I'm going someplace. And when the rest of the country sees this big new hotel, motel I've built down by the lakeside, everybody's going to admire me, which I so richly deserve. You're beginning to worry that you're running out of life, out of opportunities. What happened to my fiery enthusiasm for hauling in the cash? I could have put it a little nicer way, I suppose. I could have said, for example, raking in the dough. What's happened to me? Something marvelous is happening to you. I'm going to get this question done right now. All right. How many of you sitting in the ruins of your misfortunes realized finally that this was the point where you turned around from going downhill in the cave to greater darkness? You finally realized you had a consciousness, you turned around and you started to go upward toward the sunlight. You're not out in that bright light yet. But if you look, and you look way, way up as far as you can look, there really is a difference between the complete darkness right in front of you. You can't even see your own hand like that. But there's something happening 300 yards up there where you can look straight up. There is something up there that you don't know what it is, you can't explain it. But you know, at that point, you know it. The rest of your life is going to be spent climbing uphill. How many reach this experience, more or less? Still a lot of hard work to do, you know that. Because all along the way, let's put it outdoors so we can bring some people into it. Let's put the cave outdoors and make it a dark valley that you're going through. You've determined to get back home. Remember the story about the prince who left his father's castle? Well, this is his experience, the completion of the story. And this is your experience. This prince who came to himself, as you came to yourself in the tunnel, he decided to leave the grog shops and the old English taverns and take the long, long trail of winding back home. He thought it was going to be easy. All I have to do is go back. No! You have to allow the damage to be undone. You had your way, now you must pay. That's right. You are the only human being who gets you, human being, into human problems. Your responsibility for yourself is 100%. And it's about time that you grew up and stopped being a little whining kid and blaming others for your grief. It's about time you grew up. Do it. Well, the young prince who decided to go back to his father's castle, he thought it was going to be easy. It wasn't. You know why it wasn't easy? Because when satanic forces know that you want to get back home to your heavenly castle, when they know that, they're going to triple and quadruple the attack on you. They want you to go back to this evil world that you want to escape. So as the prince went up the long path, he was surprised by what happened. On both sides, as he traveled the miles and miles back, upward path back to the castle, as he traveled, he saw a man standing a few yards off the side of the road, and the man was yelling hateful remarks at him, depressing, gloomy remarks. He was telling Prince, you're not going to get back home. You think you're going to make it. You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You have had thoughts telling, I don't care where you are. You have had thoughts telling you you're not going to make it. They are lies. I'm telling they're lies, and you will listen to what I tell you instead of what those sick voices tell you from now on. They are lies. You can make it. It can be done. You can get home. Looked over the other side of the road, and there was a beautiful, seductive woman over there trying to get him to get over there and visit her for a while. A little further on, more evil human beings, evil spirits. Oh, I hope this sets off extra thinking on your part. He saw all along on both sides, he saw sick and evil spirits using male and female human bodies in order to be able to appear normal to the young prince. That's the way it is, you know. Evil spirits occupy human bodies, and that subject alone will be a horrible shock to you when you see it. In this class, all these shocking things that you have to go through, you must go through them. All these will be explained to you, and you'll have the spiritual support of this room to help you to go through them safely. You can't go through it alone because you're too ignorant. You're too egotistical. I can do it all by myself. Up till now, you've lived your life all by yourself. What's your life like right now? What kind of a human being are you? You know what you are. And I'll summarize it by saying you are an absolutely terrified, shaking human being who only knows to bluff it on the outside and hope that maybe a few other people will believe in it, because you can't believe in yourself. He continued up the path, and he made a mistake. And I'm explaining a mistake so that you won't make it. Every time one of these fiends disguised as humans cursed him, yelled at him, trying to discourage him, trying to lure him off with money and sex, every time one of these fiends in human form yelled at him, listen to this, he made this mistake of yelling back. Don't you ever, never engage in conversation with badness. Even a preliminary experience can help you on that. Haven't you ever talked back to someone and it just made the whole thing worse? You had to talk back. You had to get back at them. They said something mean and you said something twice as mean in order to make yourself feel better. All right. You listen. That's a simple illustration. And I tell you that way down deep in the depths of hell, that same sort of thing is operating. Satanic forces want you to talk back to them. They want to, in the first place, they want to make you nervous, more nervous. They want to get you excited. They want to mess up your mind. They want to get you talking so much that you forget that you're supposed to be getting back home. That's the whole purpose. You forget you're supposed to be climbing back home. When they yell at you from now on in your spiritual journey back, of course, the physical ears and your inner ears will hear tempting thoughts, hostile voices speaking to you. Oh yes, I better add this. Crude, vulgar, loathsome thoughts that intrude themselves onto you and try to make you think that you are them. You are not those crude, vulgar, sex thoughts, for example. You are not them. They want you to think that so you'll feel ashamed, and so you'll say, God isn't going to welcome me when I get back home, therefore I better give it. That's exactly why they do that. Your real nature is never anything that's outrageous, that is wrong. Your real nature is not any of that. The young prince made a mistake for a long time in arguing back because, see, he was so young, he thought that he had a position to protect. And what he was really protecting was his own self-image of himself, even of being a repentant young man was going to go home and for his father's forgiveness. All these were self-images. Keep your eyes straight forward on the path. They'll yell at you. They'll never give up. Evil is, if anything, it's persistent. You hear it, and then truth itself, and God will help you to do this, to understand what they're saying, and most of all, understand that your purpose of life is to get back home, not to engage in petty, childish quarrels with evil forces. Look straight forward. Remember, you're carrying the flag of liberty now. You've changed flags. Keep the flag of liberty flying high. Good morning.